Hey everyone. So this is just a little precursor, let's call it, to the video that I'm about to show. This was me just over a year ago, right before I got on a one-way trip to Thailand, giving a keynote talk at SurveyMonkey. They invited me in to talk on mental health in the workplace and really just start the conversation because SurveyMonkey, like me, know that an employer who shows empathy and caring to an employee's mental health will actually have a higher productivity rate and a better return on investment in their employees for their production and their work, just really their quality of work. And the reason why we knew this is because I had a survey that I asked people, have they called in sick with mental health? And I reached out to people who were in the banking, in sales, and lawyers, and those mentally cognizant fields. And I asked them that. Now, about 60% of those people I asked did say they had called in sick with mental health. Then the second question was, if you did call in sick with mental health, did you actually say it was mental health, or did you say it was the flu? Did you say it was a cold, an injury, etc.? And 100% of those people said they did not call in sick with mental health. So this is us starting the chapter in SurveyMonkey. They care about their employees' mental health, and it was evident that in the conversations leading up to this talk. So this is the talk at SurveyMonkey 1 year ago in the summer. I'm so excited for you guys to finally see it. I'll bring out some more of my travel videos as well. Now, with that being said, the start of the video, it got cut from the main feed. So what it is me just talking about how the story of the wheel, the invention of the wheel, was actually passed on because of a storyteller. The story of love, the story, all these life lessons, the beginning of humanity would not have been really known to humans if it wasn't through storytelling and the ancient history of humans right before writing came down. And that's where I continue on, so I'm just going to let you jump right into the video and let me know what you think, guys. Cheers.
Religion, the story of love. They all became stories and passed on. However, over time, that has taken a back seat. We've been told to keep things in, not to talk about things. Our greatest minds, the greatest artists, they're all the outcasts. They go apart from the norm. So I want to thank you all for joining me today and allowing us to be apart from the norm and talking about a topic I'm very passionate about, and that's mental health and mental well-being. So where do I start my story? I guess I'll give my basics. My name's Sterling Bennett. I'm in corporate sales full-time, and then I do this as my passion project. I came to Ottawa when I came to school here in Carleton a few years ago, and I've stayed ever since. But to really give the context about why I do what I do and why I have this as a passion, I need to go a bit farther back. So I'm a fairly large guy still, and I was a chubby kid growing up, so I got bullied. And my last name is Slowcock. I only say Bennett now, but my real last name is Slowcock. So I definitely got bullied. Now, because of my amazing friends and my amazing mother, I never really felt the effect of bullying, right? I didn't go home crying or anything like that because I had an amazing home life. A therapist a year later has told me that yes, it did affect me, but in the time, I didn't really care. And that's because my mom. She protected me from everything. To give some context of my mom, she was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, and then she moved to England when she was 3. She was raised there up until her father passed away when she was 17, so her and my grandmother came to Canada to start a new life. So that was tough, of course, losing your father at 17, but she was already a fighter at that point. When she was 14 years old, she was diagnosed with diabetes and type 1. So with that, she knew 2 things. 1, at every meal, she would need to take insulin and inject herself. And 2, she was taught that she would never be able to have kids. So she came to Canada, she went to university, she did all these great things. She knew that she couldn't have kids, so she was like, all right, I'm just gonna live life. She stopped taking her medications and she traveled the world. She met amazing people and they fell for her instantly because she had the most infectious personality that hopefully one day I can emulate. But at 33, she had a surprise pregnancy with my sister, and then a year later, she had me. So obviously, the doctors were wrong. So she quickly changed her habits. She started taking her medications. She started going to the doctors more often. She started following the protocol she needed for diabetes. As I said, she was always there to protect me. She made my home life well. So My school life wasn't the greatest, but my home life was perfect. However, entering high school, they both started to be pretty great. I'm a big guy, like I said. Grade 9, I was 6'2", 240 pounds. So, walking out my first day of school, the football coach found me, and he was like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm going home, of course." And he's like, "No, you're not. You're going to go out on the football field, and you're going to play for us." I was like, "Okay." So I went on, I got pads, and I fell in love with the sport. I couldn't wait to go home and tell my mom about it. Sadly, my mom wasn't at home. The summer before grade 9, she had her first heart attack. So she was in hospital preparing for a quadruple bypass surgery. However, even though she was in the hospital and in a rough state, she still was able to share her excitement with me and smiled the whole night because I made the football team. Grade 10, I was now the starter on my football team. I was starting offensive and defensive linemen. Life was great. I got invited to parties, I was becoming popular. I even had my first official girlfriend. I know, badass, right? While that was happening, my mom, both of her kidneys started to fail, and she had to go have surgery, get a fistula in her arm, and go on a dialysis 4 times a week. Grade 11, I'm now a senior football. We're the best team in Canada. Look it up. Notre Dame High School, Burlington. Best team in Canada. Life was great. She then had her 3rd and 4th heart attack that year. She didn't miss a game, though. She didn't miss one. Now we move to grade 12. So when people say high school is the best time of their life, they probably talk about grade 12 in specific. Senior prom, graduation, all the parties, and going off to school, whether that be college, university, or trades. Sadly, none of those happened for me. On my 17th birthday, I was awoken from my mom calling my name. Now, I was excited. I was like, ooh, maybe she got me a gift. Maybe it's a new gaming system. Maybe it's a bike. Who knows? I was excited. But I found my mom crippled on the floor in her bedroom in the worst state imaginable. She was dehydrated, and she barely was able to muster the energy to call my name. So who here has seen Fault in Our Stars? Okay, perfect. So in that movie, there's a scene where the main character, they're in the gas station, and he's in a really rough shape, and she's pleading with him to let him call the ambulance and get him help. And he's begging her not to do anything. He says he's okay, it'll be okay. That was my mom. She used every single swear word I ever knew, and a lot I didn't know either, just to make sure I didn't call an ambulance. But I knew this was serious, and I had to. So I run down the stairs, tears pouring down my face, and I call the ambulance. They come and pick her up, took her to the hospital, and she never left that hospital. They put her on IV. She started to feel better, hydrated, but they didn't really know what was wrong. So of course, like I said, they kept her. By this point, my sister was living with her boyfriend, so it was just me, a home alone, and a car. So I was living the life. I threw parties, I got to drive around the car anywhere I wanted. It was good. Fast forward to Christmas Eve. So my birthday's November 22nd, just to give context. So we fast forward a month to Christmas Eve. I was working at Future Shop at the time, and it was the busy season. So I finished my shift, I go to the work party, and now I'm heading over to my friend's to have Christmas dinner with his family. And I'm excited, play video games, just chill out and relax. My mom calls me on the way, and she was like, "Sterling, can you come into the hospital and visit me today?" And I'm like, "No, Mom, I'm still working still. It's busy, I can't just leave, I'm sorry." When in reality, I just wanted to go play video games with my friend like any teenager would. So she was like, "Okay, Sterling, I'll tell you over the phone." And she let me know that she was diagnosed with incurable stomach cancer. 2 months later, as this was going to be her last birthday, her birthday's in February, all her family flew in from England, South Africa. Everyone is here to celebrate her 53rd birthday with her and spend one last time with her. She pulled my sister and I apart from this celebration, and she let us know that she had enough. She couldn't take it anymore. She was in too much pain. It was just too much. So with my sister and my blessing, she took herself off dialysis. 3 days later, a day after Valentine's Day, and 4 days before her official birthday, my mother, Pamela Slowcock, passed away. Instantly, I felt numb to everything. All emotion except for one, guilt. I felt guilty that I didn't visit her on Christmas Eve. I felt guilty that I never visited her. I only visited her 3 times while she was in the hospital. I couldn't see her in that situation. I fucking hate hospitals. Sorry to swear. I felt guilty for all the times I swore at her, all the times I fought with her, all the times that I didn't be the best son possible. And I felt guilty that I didn't tell her I love her enough. So I went into a hell, and that hell I lasted in for 3 years. I instantly the next day dropped out of school. There was no way I was going back to high school, not a chance. My sister and her boyfriend moved into the townhouse that we grew up in to help me pay for rent, and we started to live together. I got 2 part-time jobs, one at Cineplex and one at Pizza Hut. So let me tell you my day-to-day schedule. I would wake up at noon, I would take a couple bowls, I would then go to whichever work I was scheduled at, and then I would come home and stay up until 4 a.m. doing the exact same, just doing drugs, hating myself, and beating myself up. Also, I was never taught how to cook. So at 17, on my own, every day from shift, I would just pick up a new fast food. Wendy's, McDonald's, Subway, it didn't matter. I didn't know how to cook. So I ballooned up to 330 pounds. And obviously with that, you look horrible, you don't feel right. I just absolutely hated myself. So I was in hell. And I started to feel suicidal. I tried to take my life the first time when I was 18 years old. I found a bottle of my mom's old Oxycontin. I grabbed it, I went to the bathroom, I poured out all the pills into my hand, and I looked at myself in the mirror. I stood there for 10 minutes, crying and just ready to go. I was done with life. I couldn't do anything anymore. All my friends were off to school. I had nothing to go. I didn't even have a high school diploma, and life was just passing me by. So I accepted it and just wanted to end it. But something kept me going. I didn't know what. So I poured down the pills down the toilet, I broke down crying, and I went on living. For the longest time when I was in that hell, I genuinely thought I was just too much of a coward to kill myself. I thought I even failed at killing myself. But in reality, it was just my spark inside, and it was a passion that was keeping me alive that I just didn't find yet. The next time I tried to commit suicide was about a year and a half later. I was 19. Like I said, all my friends were going off to school, they were graduating now, and I actually just got let go from another job, and I failed my high school again for the 3rd time. Complete rock bottom again. So at midnight, I left my house without my sister and her boyfriend knowing. I left a quick note, and I went to find the nearest bridge. I sat down on the edge of the bridge, and I was ready to go. But again, 10 minutes go by, I hadn't jumped yet. Thankfully this time, my friend actually called me. He had no clue what was going on, but he was just saying, hey, it's Friday night, what are you up to? Do you want to come over? And I was like, okay. So I got off the ledge, and I walked to his place, and I never talked about it. I still have not to this day told him that he saved my life. Maybe I'll save it for his wedding or something, but he did save my life that night. Sadly though, life isn't like the movies. You don't instantly just snap as soon as you don't commit suicide and get better. I had to go through things. It wasn't until months later that my life started to get saved. My sister and her boyfriend came down and let me know that they decided to move out and live with his parents to save on rent. So I needed to find a new place to live in a month. I was 20 years old at the time, and I didn't know what to do. Thankfully, while moving my stuff into like boxes, I found a card that I got in high school. It was a company called Bridging the Gap. And Bridging the Gap is a subsidy of Children's Aid Society in Burlington. And what they do is they literally bridge the gap from where kids are who are in danger of being homeless to where they want to be for ages 17 to 25. So I called them up. They gave me an intake interview. And in that interview, I met my social worker, Christy Roberts. She was the one who saved my life. She realized very quickly what my issue was. She realized that I was very self-aware. I knew everything that was wrong with me, right? Like when you have mental health, you know everything that's wrong. You realize what you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, and you realize what you should be doing, but your mind won't let you do it, right? Like I knew I needed to eat better. I knew I needed to exercise. I knew I had to go to school. I knew I had to like live life. But no matter what I tried, I was too caught up in my addiction to marijuana, and I was too caught up in just living my hell. But she saw that, so she helped me see the positives in my life. She was like, okay, Sterling, you're failing at school. You're not doing well at it. But look at this. You've lasted 3 years on your own with no guidance, no support, anything like that. You have 2 jobs, which most people can't do. You're always able to find work. You're always able to do this. And she started rattling off these positives, and I'm sitting there dumbfounded. I'm like, oh shit, there actually are good things happening in my life. So she always helped me make sure the positives outweigh the negatives. And that's something that I still hold with me today. So while living at that house, I still have the record for the lowest, there was a house that you rent, and I still have the shortest term there. So I told her I wanted to go back to high school and go to university. And I needed 7 credits, and she helped me do it in 6 months. I found this cool little adult learning high school that you get 2 credits every 6 weeks, and I was able to get my full 7 credits I needed to go to university. I got accepted and came to Carleton, where I met Haley as well. So at Carleton, I'll admit, my first year was a pretty big blur. I drank way too much than I should have. I fell back into my habits of smoking way too much weed, and I didn't have the support system that I was able to build for myself out in Burlington, and I didn't really trust Ottawa, right? Because I was, everyone loved me, I was popular again, I had all these friends, so I didn't want to open up and then be like, hey, I'm actually pretty fucked up. So I just kept things inside. I wasn't able to return to school because of financial reasons. I kind of partied away all my OSAT money, so I couldn't pay for second year. But I already had a lease, so I had to stay. So I found a job. My first job was a door-to-door salesman for internet. I know, I was the worst kind of person. Trust me. I feel like door-to-door sales is toxic as it is, but this place was the worst. I am a pretty good talker, hopefully you can tell, so I was good at my job. Because of that, I was promoted pretty quickly. So I had to be at the office for 9 a.m. so I could interview kids under my team. It was like that pyramid scheme type of thing. So I was out there at 9 a.m., and then you're on turf until 9 p.m. So every day I was working almost 12 hours. And they had an optional shift on Saturdays. And the reason why I put air quotes is because if you don't show up to that shift, they completely judge you. And when they asked me why, and I was just like, hey, I need a weekend, I need to take a break and chill, they started to question my commitment to the company. They started to question my drive, and they started to call me weak. So I instantly knew I had to get myself out of that situation. Thankfully, I was able to find a connection while selling internet to a lady who was a trainer at a Honda dealership. She said, oh, you'd be a great car salesman. So because of that, I started to work at a car dealership. She got me an interview, I aced it, started working as a car dealer. At the same time is when I had a call with Christy, where I let her know, hey, my life's not turning out the way I wanted it to be. Like, we had all these talks. I was going to go to Carleton. I was going to go to school for psychology. I was going to become a psychologist. I was going to become a social worker, whatever the plan was, but life wasn't going to plan. So I had to talk with her, and she was like, hey, why do you need to go to school for psychology or become a social worker to help people? There's other ways you can help people and create impact. So I was like, how? And she was like, Sterling, Google mental health organizations. And I did. And I found the Canadian Mental Health Association. So I reached out to them, and they let me know that there was a program called TAMI, which is talking about mental illness. So what it is people around my age, we go into high schools and elementary schools, and we share our story. And then we have people who are like actual psychologists and social workers come in and share stats, just because they didn't want to be completely bored, they wanted some kids in there. The first school I did was Canterbury High School here in Ottawa, and it was in front of the whole senior class, grade 11 and grade 12. The high I felt after sharing my story and having kids come up and share their story to me was unlike any drug I'd ever done. It was in that moment that I knew that this is what I wanted to do. Sharing my story, creating impact, and starting the conversation on mental health. While working at the dealership, they didn't believe what I was doing was real. They thought it was a joke. I remember I was actually sitting in my sales manager's office, and he scoffed at me. He was like, kids are just weak these days. I grew up in war-torn Lebanon, and look at me, I'm perfectly fine. When if you actually get any psychologist in that room, trust me, he has tons of issues. But I lasted 2 years at that dealership. It was pretty good paying, and I got a really expensive apartment, so I kind of needed the job, so I was in that waiting thing. So I lasted 2 years of being belittled, teased, backstabbed. Trust me, sales is a horrible game, but I lasted in it, and I started to study it because I was like, okay, these are the issues that are going on. I was like, no one really thinks mental illness is real. They think it's a weakness. They don't study it. They don't learn about it. So because of that, they're ignorant to it, and they don't really care to learn. So I was using it as sort of like a case study while I was there, but I was getting bad. So I faltered back. I ballooned back up to my weight that I used to be in. I started to get these bad habits in. So I realized I do need to separate myself. So I started to work at the company I've been at now. I've been at this company for 2 years. It's a great sales company. They still sort of have issues with mental health. They don't really talk about it, but they're better. They let me work from home on days that I need because they understand that an employee at 70% is better than an employee calling in sick at 0%. When I worked at the car dealership, as soon as that manager told me that he didn't believe what I had was real, I knew I would never be able to call in sick with it. So what did I do? I would call in sick with the flu. I would call in sick with a cold. I remember one time, it was winter, and I said I slipped on ice and I completely blew out my back, so I can't come into work today. But I miraculously was perfectly fine the next day. In reality, I was just having down days. So there was that gap. And in the years since, I've actually conducted studies with lawyers and bankers and fellow salesmen. Sadly, I didn't use SurveyMonkey, I'm sorry. But I conduct these studies, and every single one of those people who said yes, they called in sick with mental health, they all said they never told the truth. Not one person who's called in sick that I've talked to with mental health actually said that was the issue. They all lied about it. They all said there was something else. And that's the issue. People are not cognitively weak if they have a mental illness. to me, and I might be biased, but I think they're actually stronger. Because if they have to go through the medial day-to-day tasks with their mental illness, when you can just go through, like if people who are mentally well, they go through their day-to-day tasks, right? The same person beside them has a mental illness, doing the same thing, but they have the weight of what's going on in their dark cloud above them. So that's what we have to talk about. So that's where I am today. So that's my story. But I have points I want to get across first. So how am I today dealing with my mental health? Well, it's three things. The first is therapy. And now therapy is a funny thing, because I feel like a lot of people try therapy, but just like me, for a long time, I quit after I didn't find the right connection. They go to one therapist or one psychologist or one psychiatrist, and they don't get a good vibe, and they never go back. That's the issue. If you have a bad relationship, or if you have a bad friendship, do you quit on dating? Do you quit on finding friends? No. You understand that's just one bad person, and you'll eventually find the one that connects with you. It's the same thing with a therapist. So luckily, through the CFIR, the Center for Interpersonal Relationships, I was able to find an amazing therapist who, just like Christy, understands that my issues are self-love, self-worth, and self-hate. So she helps me deal with those. She understands that. She doesn't want me to just talk about my childhood. She helps me deal with that stuff. The second thing that I use is positive affirmations. As I talked about earlier, about always trying to make sure the positives outweigh the negatives, what I do, as soon as I catch myself saying, oh, I'm an idiot, I'm a failure, I'm doing this wrong, or I'm going down on myself, I instantly snap out of it like an elastic band, and I start to say positive things. I say, I am powerful, I am beautiful, I'm amazing, I'm worth it, and I'm passionate. Those are the things that I personally say, and I hope you have things that you would say. But the thing about affirmations, you can't just say them and just wish them into existence. You actually have to think about it. There's 3 steps to affirmations to make it work. First, you say the positive affirmation. So let's use, for example, I like apples, right? So you say, I like apples. But you don't just leave it at that. You have to picture yourself liking an apple. You eat it, right? So you actually picture yourself eating the apple. And now you think about the positive emotions attached to it. You think about that first beautiful crisp of the apple, the taste, the juices, right? And then that's how you get the affirmation. So when I say I am worthy, I have to say I am worthy, and then I have to picture it. What am I worthy about, right? And then I think about the positive affirmations I get from it. So for me, when I say I'm worthy, my story is worthy. So for me, it's when I speak in front of people like you, and I get to feel the worth of actually sharing impact, hopefully, and creating that impact, and that's where I get. So again, say the positive affirmation, think about it, and visualize it, and then you realize the positive feelings that you come from it. Next, this is a cliche, but the human body is the most premier luxury car there is. You have to take care of it, right? If you have a Maserati, you're not going to put in lawnmower fluid. You're going to make sure you get the premier gas. You're going to make sure you take it in for the oil checks. You're going to make sure you do everything right. That's the same thing with the body. So what I'm doing better right now is I'm eating better. I've worked on my diet. I'm using like MyFitnessPal and things like that, where I'm making sure I know what I'm putting into my body. I'm exercising better. I had a personal trainer for a little bit, and now I just go to the gym 4 times a week. I go for walks, I go for trails, I go for hikes. These are things that I'm able to do. If I can't go to the gym every day, right? Like, I'm not gonna say up here, every day after 5 o'clock, I finish my shift, I go to the gym. That's impossible, and I promise you, I don't. But if I can't go to the gym that day and I can't muster the energy, I go for an hour walk. I put my music in, I write, I listen to podcasts, but I go for a walk to get some calories burned. And that's the thing, right? So what I want to talk about is things that you can also do in the workplace. There's a few issues that I've noticed in the workplace. The first is, this, the stats that 1 in 4 people are dealing with mental health. And then there's the other stat that 1 in 4 people are dealing with mental health behind closed doors. So what that actually means is half the people here are dealing with a mental health issue either openly or behind closed doors. So that's first. We need to create the dynamic to realize that. So when you deal with health, physical health, let's talk about, you go to the doctor, you go to the dentist. As soon as you get a cold or a sore throat, you go get it checked out, right? You're proactive with physical health. With mental health, we're always reactive, and only reactive when it starts to critical and you can't cope with your life anymore. When you start feeling down and gloom, that's not when you go get checked out. It's when you can no longer go to work and you lose your job, or you lose your house, or you lose your relationship. That's when you actually go get help. And that's the issue. It's because in the past, We didn't know about mental health. As soon as we knew someone who was mentally ill, we shipped them off to an asylum and we never saw from them again, right? They were completely ostracized in our community. That's not what it's supposed to be. There's no difference between someone with depression and someone with a broken arm. They both need help and they both need medical attention, whether it be through a psychologist or whether it be through a doctor with a cast. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the fact that people think it doesn't affect everyone. So yes, those stats of 1 in 4, and so reality 1 in 2, but actually, they now are considering stress as mental health illness. So a lot of you guys are here are fairly young. So university stress, last minute finals, exams, midterms, you guys were stressing, staying up until 3 a.m. studying all-nighters. That's stress, and that affected your day-to-day life. You couldn't see your friends. You might have ruined relationships, all because of the stress of exams. And now that we're in the workplace, it's the same thing. Deadlines for projects, all of this. The saying of the day where you had to leave your problems at the door and then come to work, it's impossible. Social media, increasing debt for people, a horrible political environment that we have right now. These are all reasons that your personal issues outside will seep into work, and vice versa. Your work issues now seep into your day-to-day life. So we need to communicate and talk. So I have 2 messages to people. To the team leads and the managers in this office. I want you to know that your employees, if they're dealing with mental illness or not, they are not weak. They are not inferior to anyone who's mentally well. They can do the job and perfectly well. And for those of you in here that are dealing with a mental illness, whether it be more visible, like bipolar or ADHD, or something invisible, like depression, anxiety, or any of those, there's nothing wrong with you. Go to therapy, try to get the help, build the support system, because one day you will find a support system that connects with you and is able to help. And one day you will also find a person that you're able to connect with and create impact in their life. So when they're going through things that you went through, or they're going through similar struggles as now, they realize that they're not alone, because that's the thing about mental health. We all go through it together. So I feel like I skipped a couple things, but that's okay. So I'd love to enter this into more of a discussion now at this point. Any questions that you may have for me or my story or mental health in the workplace, or if you just want to discuss things and for us to go around together in like a sort of a round table-esque. So does anyone have any questions or?